Why this report? Well, the purpose of this report is to reveal what's happening to dairy cows and their calves, and to break the silence about certain practices in the industry, no matter how unpalatable they may be. The fact is that the dairy industry has been incredibly successful in presenting and selling an image of their industry, which is essentially about happy, contented cows in the sunshine, eating and chomping away in green fields. Now, we're not saying that's a false picture, but it's a very, very small part of the picture, and it doesn't reveal the actual lives of the cows, and that's what we've tried to do in this report. The industry has been able to pretty much sell the industry on the basis of several points. The first one is that dairy is essential for human health. The second one is that dairy cows actually need to be milked for their health and welfare. Related to that is the point that dairy is a non-harm industry. And finally, that dairy farmers are battlers, and that they work hard, they're not paid enough, and that they need public support. Voiceless has no argument with that last point. In fact, we have been very careful in our thinking about this report, in the knowledge that it may be to the detriment of dairy farmers. But the fact is the industry has been successful in presenting those first 3 points as facts, and so in a sense has escaped the scrutiny of other animal-based industries and has flown under the radar. And what you won't see in the beautiful publicity for Australian dairy are undernourished cows with very little muscle and huge pendulous udders. A cow that has been purpose bred for high milk production and a large udder, and a cow who never gets to raise her calf. So we believe it's time that the real facts of dairy were made available to the Australian consumer, and at the same time that Voiceless is able to present some alternative scenarios to the one being enacted at the moment, which is based on high volume. It's important to know that the modern dairy cow has been purpose bred for a big udder and to maximise milk production. In fact, the cow now produces 3 times the amount of milk that she produced 50 years ago, and indeed now produces 10 times the amount of milk necessary to raise a calf. This puts a great strain on the body of the cow, so much so that many dairy cows suffer from undernourishment and metabolic disorders. The strain that the cow is under also puts her body under stress and makes it more vulnerable for bacterial and viral diseases. So the first welfare concern is the fact that, in a sense, the cow is simply overworked. The dairy expert John Webster has said that for many cows it's actually not possible for them to have enough hours in the day to eat what they need to eat, to look after their own nutritional needs, plus produce the volume of milk that's required of them. So this leads to a number of welfare issues. But before we go on to those, it's important to know how the cow gets to produce milk in the first place. It's not natural for an animal to be continuously producing milk. The cow, like all mammals, including ourselves, can only produce milk after she's given birth to a calf. So this means for the dairy cow that she must have a calf around every 13 months. This is a huge requirement on her body, but more importantly, it means that the cow and the calf have to be separated, usually within 12 hours of birth, because the calf is not required. It's simply there to initiate the physiological function of milking. So that's the first really serious welfare issue that we see in Australian dairy, indeed dairying worldwide, is the fact that this absolutely quintessential mother, loving maternal creature, never gets to raise her own calf and goes through we don't know what pain at the separation of her calf. What we do know is she shows all the signs of being in all sorts of distress when the calf is removed. So that's the first thing that really needs to be looked at very carefully, this whole issue of separating the calf from the cow. What happens to these calves? Firstly, there's an enormous number of them, around 800,000 every year in Australia alone must be killed. There's no purpose for them. The little female calves, many of those are used as replacement cows for the dairy, but the little boy calves, known as bobby calves, and the females that have been produced by a bull rather than artificial insemination, and therefore their genetic history can't be guaranteed and certified, they are essentially a waste product of the industry. So these same little calves that people take their kids along to petting zoos to pat and coo over are loaded into trucks and taken off to be killed. And as they're on those trucks, they are legally able to go up to 30 hours without having a drink of milk. The other problem that can arise is mastitis. Again, a problem which is endemic to all dairy industries, and Australia is no exception. That's an infection of the udder or the teats, and it's usually a bacterial infection and causes great pain and distress to the cow, and again is another cause for premature culling. The other welfare issues that we discuss are the desponding and dehorning of cows, very, very painful procedure that can have long-term consequences, and the tail docking, which, while it's not encouraged or even supported by the dairy industries now, is still practiced by around 18% of farmers. Then, of course, we have the issue of the live export of dairy cows to Pakistan, Thailand, and more recently on a very big scale to China, and the fact that we have absolutely no control over the conditions of those cows once they reach their destination. So they are the main welfare issues associated with Australian dairy, and they're issues that we believe the public need to know about and need to use those as a basis for making decisions about their dairy consumption. Well, the first thing, and probably the most important, is not to turn away. It's really hard for all of us to face up to what's happening to animals, and it's really unpleasant and it's really painful. And it's easy to turn away. So the first thing I would say to people is please read the report. Don't take the easy way out. Look at it in the face, because it's only when we do that that we're spurred on to take some action. No matter how hard it is, it's much harder for the cows. So that's the first thing. Look at it in the face, look at the facts, and then make a judgment. Following that, it could be to ask dairy producers some questions. What do you do with your baby calves? How long do they stay with their mothers? What happens to them at the end of that period? What happens to the cows with lameness and with mastitis? How long do your cows live? The fact is that in the wild, in nature, a cow will live for 25 years. Most dairy cows don't get beyond 5 or 6. How old are your dairy cows? What's the average age? The other thing you can do is encourage retailers to offer animal-friendly products. If people are going to consume dairy, look at the dairy producers that are creating the best welfare conditions for their cows. Organic dairies, small farms where cows are kept with their calves. We have some examples of that in the report. Alternative models of raising animals to produce dairy. So that's another thing that consumers can do. The other thing is consider dairy alternatives. Consider if we must have a liquid white substance on our cereal, it doesn't have to come from a living creature whose calf has been stolen to produce that milk in the carton. We can use rice milk, soy milk, almond milk. There are all sorts of alternatives for us to use now that are really, really palatable. And the other thing is to build awareness of people around you. Most people mean well. Most people think dairy is a non-harm industry and there's no harm in milk. Talk about it. Raise the issues with them. And write to your local MP. Now that we're having more rationalisation in the dairy industry, there will be more buyers coming in and buying up the family farm. Ask your MP, what do they know about what's happening in their electorate? What are the welfare conditions on those farms? Who's guaranteeing welfare conditions for those animals? So they're just some of the things that people can do. But above all, read the report, understand it, and talk about it, and then make some decisions based on that.